Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our very first Sweet Meadow Knits Zoom session. This is going to be all about color work, and I just wanted to take a minute to introduce myself, talk a little bit about the project I am currently working on, and invite you all to join me on Saturday mornings at 9 o'clock Mountain Time. So 11 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in the morning Pacific, and I have my coffee. Oops, you can't see it. There it is. So I'm just getting started this morning and wanted to welcome you. So the project I'm working on right now, and I believe I'm going to unblur my background so it doesn't interfere. There we go. Is a little doggy sweater for my dog Benji, who might bark in the background. Ignore that if you hear it. Um, and he was a puppy last year and now he's big. So this is the sweater I worked on for the last few weeks. It was a stash buster project. I don't know if you would call it a stash buster project or an art project. I had a lot of fun just winging the colors. I dump all the yarn on the table and pick the colors. And I knew I had two skeins of this dark brown, and he's white with brown and gray spots. So he would look good with this up against his neck, and that's why I picked that color. And then I just started working with the colors to transform my color work from deep browns, and you can see there's a little bit of red in there. The light is really good in the morning sitting at the kitchen table. And there's a little bit of red speckle in there. And so I just wanted to move from reds into oranges and pull in some blue, blue-green. And as I progressed, I realized, well, I'm using a lot of mixed and heathered tones here. I decided for the dog bones to go ahead and use a solid color. And then a little bit of contrast right here. And as I went down, I pulled in some purple. It's actually a red violet, just picking up on the red violet, deep red violet tone of the bone here. And then mimicking, pulling back in the blue greens and moving back into orange. And as I progressed, all I was thinking about was balancing the colors as I moved along. And this is the end result. I'll pull it back. And you can see that the colors behind the bones are more neutral. That is, they're more muted. In order to make a muted color, what you want to do with fiber is mix complementary colors into the fiber. So if you start with an orange, say, this is an orange, it's called nutmeg, and it's very muted because it has a lot of its contrast color in the fiber or in the dye. Either way, same with this gray. It looks gray paired with this teal, but it actually is a combination of a lot of different colors, which makes it look gray from a distance. And the way I decided to work this sweater was to work it in the round, and I added stitches right here and at the armholes for steeks. You can really see it well with the armholes. And then in the middle for the steeking section, I like to use a lice pattern, or I call it a checkerboard. So one of the benefits of working that way is it's just a lot faster to knit stranded color work rather than to work back and forth, knit and purl. Although sometimes I do that as well, and it like anything else, it just takes practice. So this is the way I decided. I started with creating a pattern using stitch fiddle. And I just did it in gray and white, and then I printed it out. And you can see my repeat. Here's the beginning with this checkerboard or lice pattern right there and at the top. And then the pattern repeat works from here to here. And I have 4 sets of bone on my sweater. Uh, and just depends on the size of your dog, how many sets of bones you want to have or where you want to start and stop. So it worked out really well for me. His back was 20 inches long and from the neck, and that 20 inches was 4 sets of bones. And then I worked this last little bit and finished off. So one of the things I have discovered, and the whole process was about working with color combinations and seeing what looks good and what you do, what you like and what you don't like. And some of these, like this little Peary pattern, which means little, it's a small pattern repeat in between the bones. I really liked using a monochromatic, almost a monochromatic kind of color combination there. And the idea was also to keep my backgrounds softer. The contrast is softer and the contrast is higher between the bone and the bone's background. Some of them I wasn't quite as happy with. Now, this looks really nice in the daytime, but at night, this contrast is so subtle it almost disappears. So in a sweater, I probably would add a little more contrast. I wouldn't probably use these colors, although I was fine with it in the dog sweater. And just depends on how much patience you have. When I was beginning, I ripped out maybe 3 or 4 times before I found a combination and a progression that I liked. So if you're wanting to come up with your own color combinations, then that's probably what you'll find, that you just need a little bit of patience. And sometimes you'll rip out because when you put 2 colors together, let's say I'm just reaching into my bin of colors. I've got lots of colors here. I've got 2 colors here. Do they have enough contrast? Yes or no? Well, they look like they do. But when you have one little thread next to the next little thread, sometimes the contrast just isn't there. So I'm going to do a little trick that does help to determine whether, and sometimes you just don't like the combination once you get it on the project, and then you just rip it out. So in this case, I would have guessed there was enough contrast. The peach is lighter than the purple, even though they look similar. And let me raise this up so you can see it. And since I can still see, once I twisted the 2 yarns together, I can still see the 2 colors. Put it over against the white. There, hold it still. So you can see that you can still see the 2 colors. That is enough contrast. However, it's not a lot of contrast. It's not a stark contrast. And sometimes you want more contrast and sometimes you want less. And it really depends on the pattern and the mood of the piece that you're going for. So that's one little trick that I use all the time. And there are others, which I will talk about in later sessions. But for this week, I just wanted to say it's all about picking colors for a stash buster. So, as Franklin Habit said, let's not call them stash supplies, let's call them art supplies. And now I have a new art project. And today I'll finish steeking it, and I will be putting up the final video of my steeking and the finished sweater on my little doggy Benji. in the next blog post that's coming up soon. So thank you for listening, and I hope you all have a great day. Enjoy your Saturday, and I will see you next week at the same time, 9 o'clock Mountain, 11 o'clock Eastern, right here at Sweet Meadow Knits. And below in the notes, I will put the link to the Zoom so that it will always be there. Have a great day.